Great, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Core Outdoors Speaker Series. I'm your host, Jamie Moy, an adventure journalist in the West Kootenays. Once a month, Core, aka the Kootenay Outdoor Recreation Enterprise, produces this webinar to share valuable information in the outdoor rec tech space and continue to strengthen our regional community of gear manufacturers, makers, and designers. For our session today, I'm delighted to welcome Pete Hill. Pete's the founder of Pete Hill Ltd in Squamish. It's a design and development studio, and he's prepared a masterclass style presentation for us this afternoon. Before we get going on that, I just wanted to say, let's keep this interactive. So instead of holding questions until the end for a Q&A, let's just go ahead and take them as they go or as we go. So what I'll have you do is, as a question arises, just type it into the chat. I can monitor the chat and then pose those questions to Pete as we go along. And even before we dive into Pete's presentation, I would love it, Pete, if you could just kind of ground us a bit in some of the backstory here on your experience and what led you to want to talk about the topics that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Um, so I think where this presentation evolved from was initially putting together a little design presentation for backpacking light on design in the ultralight space. And then talking with Kevin and you, Kevin made the mistake of saying, well, you can talk about whatever you want. So I want to frame the design discussion a little bit with some history of where I've seen the outdoor industry evolve from and going to. And kind of with that, where my career started is I actually started working in a backpacking shop in Phoenix, Arizona, when I was just out of high school. Pardon me. Hoya Bar Mountaineering, which was at that point a regional chain in the Rocky Mountains, Arizona, and California. They were a brand, a manufacturer, a retailer, and then they ultimately got bought by the North Face to expand their retail. And then I went to university and got a clothing and textile degree through the home ec department, which was half business and half pattern making, textile science, actually patterning and making stuff. I think this is pre broad advent of industrial design as a steady career, though it was there, certainly before any specialization in textiles. So with that, I came out of that program, and because I had been working at a North Face store, I found out about this pattern making and assistant design position at the North Face. And I'll touch back on this the industrial design link, because I think that's also part of a really interesting evolution from, at that point, that career was building, and I interned for a bit, building models for computer boxes out of surfboard foam and gluing them together, and no textiles. If they got hired by somebody like Porsche to do a luggage piece, they'd build it out of foam. So it really lacked that immediacy of what textiles brings. Then when we get going, just one sec, but when I started at the North Face, everything was in Berkeley. Manufacturing, design, it was all on 4th Street or Gilman. And, I worked with sample sewers, and initially I was a pattern maker. And my direct report was an industrial designer out of Stanford who had no relation to the outdoor industry or to textiles. And then that transitioned, pardon me, within a couple of years, the North Face was bought by Odyssey International, a holding and sourcing company run by actually an outdoor veteran, Bill Simon. And he was teaching me how to write faxes in factory format to get our products made in, I guess, Guangdong province. But with that, let me roll into kind of my presentation here, and please do ask questions. And also, I mean, I have everybody has opinions, bad jokes about opinions, but um, people do product quite successfully, quite innovatively, a whole lot of different ways. I just have an opinion about what works for me and, what I enjoy. So this, wait a minute,
So is that
we
like
go,
a caveat here? I should insert like these are the opinions of Pete Hill only and in no way associated with core.
yeah, that would be good. Um,
Got it. So
oh,
you want to go ahead
okay,
and share your screen?
yeah, let me share screen.
Perfect.
Well, and also I don't, when you expressing an opinion, the I don't want people to think that I'm diminishing how other people do things because I'm really not. I just, do whatever works for you. I think there's just some challenges. This was pretty funny. A friend of mine my climbing partner was a professional photographer, and this became the photo for Climbing Magazine online for old geezers still getting after it. So so when I started, and these ads predate me, but kind of the whole industry was garage grown, and it was um, inspirational and motivational, right? I mean, these were all fanatics. They were climbers and outdoorsmen and women, and Dick Kelty and Jerry is a person, and they're facing all the same challenges that the garage grown gear people face now, which is, yeah, where do I source it? How do I figure out how to make it? How do I train people to make it? So it was a pretty interesting time that then pivoted to, um, offshore production as trade changed. But it was also this crazy maker culture, right? I mean, Hoya Bar Mountaineering Frostline kits, when I started working retail, you could walk in and buy a kit to make a down jacket or a tent, all the pieces cut out, kind of like Rip Stop on the Roll and other make your own bag movements. Very much harkens back to what was going on in the 70s. And at that time, you could actually save money by buying a kit. As Asian production started up and the economics changed, the economies disappeared and nobody saved any money making a kit. And but I think the movement then was inspirational, right? Everything was about, sure, you can do this, right? You don't have to be a pro. You don't have to, like, if I can do it, you can do it. And I love this picture. Bunch of guys in a van, load up, drive to Patagonia, and climb a bunch of stuff. They're just a bunch of guys. They just happen to be Doug Tompkins, who founded the North Face, and then Esprit and Yvon Chouinard, Patagonia fame, Dick Dorwith, Lito Tejada Flores, who were kind of luminaries in that period. But the ethic of the industry was, hey, if I can do it, what's keeping you from loading up your van? The North Face was always a little different, right? Doug Tompkins started it. Hap Klopp, who was a Stanford MBA, bought it, hired people to do things. So it was very much a business, but it was still very inspirational. Bruce Hamilton was a Buckminster Fuller math freak, and they actually built these big geodesic domes, these incredibly inspirational things in Berkeley, and they got Bucky to come out, and unfortunately, just before my time. So again, it was all about inspiration and we can do it. And then I see this shift to things becoming more aspirational, which is, you know, we can do it, but you can't. But it's going to be fun to watch, and then you'll do other stuff. I mean, this ad, and again, not to diminish the fact that pro athletes came along, sponsored athletes, changed sport, changed that high level outdoor sport. I mean, if these people weren't doing it full time, you'd never see the crazy stuff that's going on now.
Hey, Pete,
Yeah, go ahead.
around us, like what decade are we talking about this shift to this aspirational with professional sponsored athletes?
So this was coming in the 80s, like 85 to 90. The North Face Extreme Team, which again was, at the face of it was like the first expedition that the North Face sponsored for Conrad Anker and Mug Stump. was in there, and Conroy was a shop employee in Salt Lake, and Muggs was a mountain guide and like classic dirtbag. But this ad, the tagline, I don't remember if it was the working tagline or the real one, but if you're going to jump off a 60-foot cliff at 100 miles an hour, you need professional help. And I think that started changing the dynamic. And also, top of the pyramid marketing, right? We will build gear for the top of Everest, but you need to find your own Everest. Conrad will take you along on this great adventure, but you're not going there. You're going to be inspired and take it on this little hike. But again, that kind of separation between the aspirational and then what everybody else did. Also in there, so this was, I think my first trip to Asia was in the 85 or 86 for fun. I actually went backpacking in China back when it was a different place. And my first work trip would have been 87-ish to Taiwan and Korea, because those places, they had sewing industries that supported the Korean War and the Vietnam War, right? So there's a lot of canvas and textiles businesses. But it started to shift what designers did from making it to making spec packages. And we actually did a test at one point when I was looking for, at Low Pro, new factories. We sent them tech packs that had first patterns. And the people that used our patterns created this three-dimensional product where surfaces transected planes, and the people that didn't, that said, no, we got pattern makers, they looked two-dimensional. Now again, a lot good can come of this, but that's not what I prefer. So again, this kind of disconnect and siloing as companies grew bigger and bigger. You had designers who were then paired with developers who would interpret what the designers did. And, when it's good, also bring a ton to the party, right? I mean, like it got better. And then we go to the merchandiser in the factory, who was kind of the business guy and usually the English-speaking person, who would then translate your spec for the pattern master, who would then interpret this and build one. And then the sample sewer would make it, and it's, it keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And again, if it's good, it kept getting better. And I've worked in some environments where like the pattern master and the sample servers and the merchandisers, man, it's just all clicking, and they are so damn good that what you come up with is better than anybody could have envisioned. But not always. And from when the designer sends that first spec, or the developer sends it, if you're a good customer, it's 3 weeks before you get a sample back. If you're the rest of us, it's 6. And you might do that 3 times, and it sits for a couple of weeks in your office while you review it. And this separation happens. So early on, when I was working for Cascade Designs, I started looking for a different way to express my concepts in a way that would communicate more clearly, so that the pattern master could look at it and go, okay, I got this. I can get to my first mock-up pretty quickly. Then we can start refining, and I've got a better idea of what they're thinking. So this is Rhino. When I first started using it, it was actually a plugin for AutoCAD. It was a toolbar plugin because AutoCAD was so complicated. And the office was in Wallingford in the Seattle area, and you go to their little shack office and take classes. And so that was kind of, and I'm going to show more of that, and that's the path I'm on. Resources that express clearly what I want to do, and hey Cam, and also they're like force multipliers, because I'm largely a one-person shop. Max I kind of get up to is 3. So I need resources that let me create lots of information, including specs and marketing materials. And but I think what's happening now is, like time to get inspirational again. And along comes the ultralight crew. And they're all about, sure you can. And honestly, it feels like we've stepped back to the 80s where the community is saying, hell yeah, you can do this because we got your back. We'll show you how in great detail. We'll support what you want to do. I mean, there are people doing like calendar year Triple Crown through hikes that nobody in the right mind wants to do, but you can do any piece of it and have the similar experience. Okay, so also with this is a change in marketing, right? From top of the pyramid to community marketing. Hey, trust us, we're your people. This is the backcountry bidet, right? Wash your butt. Don't take toilet paper. Wash your butt with a water bottle. Can you imagine Jimmy Chin and Conrad? They're up on Meru and the portal edge opens and Jimmy goes, hey man, Rad, I gotta take a dump. Oh, cool. Takes a dump, goes, hey man, can you hand me my water bottle? I want to wash my butt. Is anybody gonna buy this thing? Like, not a chance. Not a chance in the world. But when Lloyd at Garage Ground Gear and all of the people posting stuff in the community says, all right, look, far-fetched, I know it. Like, really, I get it. You're not going to believe this, but trust me, these things sell. And along with that, you've got the community saying, again, trust me, sub 10 pounds, if you take just this, you'll be okay. You can do this. Don't worry about it. You don't have to walk the aisles in REI and buy reassurance. This stuff works. I mean, if this guy can carry his guitar in a gunny sack and do the AT and the PC in record time, really, how hard can it be? Just take this stuff, it'll be okay. Now, I think I'm so clever. I think the ultralight community, this is their motto, which is I got my shit dialed, right? If you're only carrying 8 pounds, like, you got it dialed. That's all you're taking. But I think at somewhere along the lines, the skill level got stuck. This is the vernacular backpack for this community. It's easy to build, simple. People aren't carrying very much. It's the same thing throughout every manufacturer. I just to harken back, I love this photo. You know, back in the inspiration days of the mainstream outdoor industry, like, you take some faith to look at this guy and go, oh, that's a good idea. Sure, I'll do that. Or look at this and go, all right, I bought a 65-liter pack and I filled it full of 50 pounds of the lightest gear on earth. And if I pack it this way, it'll feel better. Well, no, it really doesn't. The ultralight community said, you know what? Just carry a little pack and leave a lot of that shit at home and it gets comfortable. I mean, after all, if you're carrying under 25 pounds, the design challenge isn't that big. And not to disparage anybody, because like this stuff works, but it got stuck, and maybe it got stuck because that's all it has to be. And this is looking at kind of a version of the standard sack, and for domestic manufacture, like, it makes sense, right? Basically, you can build the bag with 3 pieces, 3 rectangles, add shoulder straps, a hip belt, pockets if you want, but very good material utilization, which means you don't waste anything, which is the ultimate green approach. You don't waste money because you don't have some funky cut. It's low tech. You don't need a Gerber system to do your layout to make sure that the grain direction's right and you get max utilization. But for this for this previous talk and for process I'm going to show, I looked at it and said, okay, well, what if I want to accomplish the same thing? I want my snacks accessible on the fly. There's a 35 or 40 liter pack that weighs a pound with a frame and a hip belt. But I want to see if I can do kind of everything within reason differently. So, you know, I mean, you can get to 2 750 milliliter bottles and snacks while you're walking, but not with a big pocket strapped on the side. I actually, if you're looking at the image on the left, carved out some volume from the inside of the pack, made the pack a little bigger, and that gave me that quick access pocket. I also put curve in every dimension. It wasn't particularly hard to sew. It's harder to pattern, but that's a skill that's around. So this is my first op. This is a first proto. It is made with Alula fabric, so that's a plus. But if it was 210D, I would have added a couple of ounces. And again, the pattern is more complicated, but it's not that big a deal. And you can decide, from the first mock-up, which is always most complex, how you want to simplify. But let's go back. So from here, let's roll into Rhino. Anybody got questions, or am I just so captivating you're all good? Okay, we'll keep rolling. All right, now on to Rhino. And I have invested time with other programs, but for what I want to do, which is create models that let me pull 2D art off it, develop or unroll surfaces into patterns so I can get the first mock-ups all in one package. I haven't done anything better. Clo, like if you're a wizard, you can do it. The learning curve is much steeper. Fusion 360, to really flatten surfaces, you then need to go to Exact Flat or something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to show like toolbars and how I am doing everything. This is more about the thought process for how I go about it, because anybody who models knows how you approach the problem is half the battle. So I start out with a back curve, and interestingly, a lot of the ultralight packs are they're rectangles with straps. But building back curve into the product, I think, is a pretty good idea. And then from that, I look at the silhouette. So what is the outline, pardon me, of the pack I want to design? And then I take the shape, and I extrude it, and then project the outline onto my curve. So now the shape I want, the outline I want the bag to have matches the shape I want it to ultimately attain to fit on the body. And this, again, there's a lot of people that are much better at 3D stuff than I am. I'm kind of stuck in a rut. I mean, like everybody, I do tutorials all the time, and I pick up little things. So this program is not parametric, really, which means I can't go back. If I change one dimension, it doesn't change everything else. But what I find is, because I'm sewing this stuff, the model has to be relatively simple, right? And I found that if you make a relatively simple model, it tends to execute better in fabric than if you make a really complicated model, because ultimately you're building a three-dimensional thing out of flat stuff. So if I need to make changes, I can go back and rebuild it, and I always learn something different. It gets better. So then I take this shape, which is my outline, and to create the volume of the body of the pack, I projected it forward in space, and I kicked the bottom up a little bit and the top down just a little bit to give it some shape. I kept the overall proportion the same. And then for defining a front pocket, again, I looked at what the shape of my front pocket was going to be, the curvature, and then the outline, right? So that's ultimately what the pocket's going to look like. And for those of you who are 3D people, like you've already figured this out. I'm gonna extrude the shape of the front pocket and then project the outline onto it. So now I've got the shape of my pack, the volume of my pack, shape of the front pocket, and I can do a lot of messing around. I mean, this model is a little old, but if I, like when I'm working on it, I would clean this up, reduce the points, have cleaner curves. And then if I want to, shove them around, bring that a little, bring in, points, change the shape. I can do a lot of sculpture, which I really enjoy. And the thing I like about hard goods, about bags, is the challenge starts over every time. I mean, really, you don't have to get that many things right on a bag to have it, particularly, stuff that's going to be under 20 pounds of carrying. You don't have to get that much right to have it carry well. Basically, you got to get the shoulder straps right. That gives you a lot of freedom. All right, so now it's starting to get more interesting. I'm going to create a plane or a surface that transects a bunch of planes, the top, the side, the back. And when I actually built this pack, I reinforced this. So I had this stiffer member going from the top to the sides to the back, added a tremendous amount of structure to the pack without throwing in aluminum bars and stuff. The other thing is I've worked with some really hot pattern makers. I defy them to scratch their heads if I give them perspective drawings and orthographic drawings, figure out how the hell to do this. I mean, people can and they do, shy of building a cardboard model, which is also entirely valid. And there are times when I will get out a glue gun and cardboard and build a carapace, build a thing or wiring, and actually just build it and then start refining. And it's fun too. I mean, that's why we're doing this, right? So again, building in complexity, these are actually going to be where zippers are going to go in and create an access to a pocket that's built into the interior pack, carving out some interior volume. Now, I'm going to, again, to do this, to create models that translate well into sewn products, you're not building watertight models that, like you would with plastic. Because for one thing, the tolerances are like plus or minus 2 millimeters sewing, and it's just unnecessary. And my other bias is if you build a beautiful model and you render it beautifully, and it's like it's out of compression molded foam or plastic, the client will go, damn, I want that. I want that. And fabric never looks like that. So then you end up going through sample rounds. We're like, well, can you put a little more foam in there? Can you put a little more plastic in there? Can you make it a little stiffer? That's not textiles. So I actually sort of bias against doing things that are renderings that are too slick. But to surface this, I use the Sweep 2 rails, and the rails can curve in all kinds of dimensions. That's fine. But the sweeping shapes need to be straight. And then you get this nice, beautiful surface that can be developed or unwrapped. Come on. There we go. So, gorgeous surface. There are times when I'll go in, and if the surface has like little bobbles in it, I will tend to go in and straighten things out. Kind of depending on what I need my output to be. Let's go to that view. So I get rid of the surface, I leave the silhouette, and let's measure one of these. So length, if you build it right, that one is 21,642. Measure the line it came off, 21,642. It's dead on. But if it's off a little bit, it's off 2 millimeters or 5 millimeters. I won't kill myself correcting the model. I'll just correct the flat patterns because it's all about what's the output. It's like how good does your photo quality have to be? It's like, I don't know. What are you gonna do with it? You're gonna put it on the web? Not very good. If you're gonna print it, better. So here's the fully surfaced model, and it can render up, make a nice pleasing render. But again, depending upon what I'm using it for, will depend on how groovy I make it. Now, again, talking about like force multipliers, you can grab this model, grab whatever view you need. Like there are times where you're trying to explain hydration ports or something on the top. So instead of trying to, drawing that and just imagining what the perspective drawing would be, you can actually just grab this. And there's always a risk with performance modeling that it won't work out, but 2D drawing, scene, view. You can say, great, give me that view. And now as I'm building my spec, I've got a lot of great assets to start working from. And okay, so let's so that sample that I showed you is from this model. And in it, we can carve this up for sewing lines however we want, right? I did them horizontally for two reasons. One, I wanted to have accessory tabs located in different places, so I wanted seam lines available for it. I also wanted to create just a ton of shape because the vernacular ultralight pack has no shape. So just to kind of say, yeah, okay, I mean, sure, do a box, do a not box, both very attainable. I mean, if I was going to do this, actually produce this, then I would go in and look at really how well do all of these nest, what's my utilization going to be. If I make small changes that improve the yield, does that change the pack? That's sort of that balance between design and development mindset, which I think as a designer, there is a dividing line between design and development. Design expresses what you want. Development gives instructions how to do it. Once that handoff is made, designer stops designing. The only time you start designing again is development or the factory says, really pretty, but kind of stupid, you can't make it. Can we change these aspects so that it's manufacturable? Then design becomes a consultant to development and you keep going. Where designers, I think, have given themselves a bad name, not infrequently, is they want to keep designing stuff. Where you get to the point where you're like, okay, design is over. Now we're like, this is commercial. We measure success in dollars. So we're gonna, it's got to be a great product, but like, you don't make money, you don't make back money that you didn't earn by delaying a launch because you want to keep messing around. So anyway, this is a simplified version of that earlier pack. And lumbar frame, hang on a sec. There we go. So I'll get into this in a little bit, but also like I modeled up a frame that is a.
Hey, Pete, before you
Oh
get
yeah,
too far
yeah.
into that,
Yeah.
I may.
hmm
Uh, Marcus is wondering, in your experience, is it usually a clean handoff from designer to developers?
If it's a good organization, yes. But that's, again, that is, I mean, clean. I mean, maybe Marcus has thought about like defining what's messy, but I think yes, it should be at the point where everybody signs off on the design intent. That information is communicated to the developer in a way that they say, "Yeah, I got it," and they check back with the designer if there's any questions or something obfuscated. If it's not clean, if there's unnecessary tension in there, then that's an organizational issue.
Hmm. And we have
Uh,
one more that just popped in.
yeah,
Gina was wondering if anyone's had any luck flattening SolidWorks surfaces into patterns.
you know, uh, I'm such a cheap ass. I never really got into SolidWorks. But my understanding is you have to go to a third party like Exact Flat, which will flatten any surface for money.
Yeah, Cam said it's easy to do in SolidWorks.
Oh, worth that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the difference is, Rhino is like $1,200. It's not, for a license, there's no re-up, there's no service, and it's relatively simple. And it could just be because that's my background, right? I mean, people that drive SolidWorks they're fans. Um, anyway, so I'll get into this later, but I do a fair amount of like plastic bits and pieces to test an idea. And in some cases they can go quite a ways, and in others, like I've worked with Cam, where I need engineering brilliance. And so I go to brilliance. All right. Now let me Julian, you're kind of on my screen at the moment. Well, let me go to share. All right, let me go back to PowerPoint. Come on. So, okay, so one of the things I like about 3D, um, I mean, besides that you can express ideas more completely, so it lets me mess around, and it lets me mess around kind of quickly. Where if I have an idea that I think is kind of stupid, or I know I'm going to learn something, I'm just not sure what, I can model this up and generate patterns in a couple hours. And then so that overcomes the hesitation of like, do I need to build something or figure this out flat pattern? I think it's always important to where you start running into impediments where you start hesitating, you come up with workarounds or solutions. For me, 3D is a solution for that hesitation of saying, okay, patterning that's going to be a pain in the ass to figure it out. I can do it in Rhino. I can try things knowing that on the face of it, yeah, there's a kernel in there, but I don't quite know what it is. The other thing is, if you hesitate because you don't want to waste good materials, I got a roll of roofing felt, right? It's basically a slit film polypropylene, I think, with a backing. Sews great. I have a bunch left over from doing my shed. It's great to prototype with, and I don't worry about it for a second. Um, Cardboard models. Yeah, absolutely. This one, if you do your main mirror line silhouette and then start building details, you don't have to worry about being perfectly symmetrical. All you need is a center line because then you can mirror the patterns. And there are times when that's definitely still a tool in the box where like I just can't get my head bent around how to model it. I'll build one.
Hey,
So
Pete,
yeah,
do you have your samples cut through a plotter? That's from Mike.
no, so I do two ways. I mean, I would love to have a big thing. I've got a little Glowforge laser cutter, which actually fit. I mean, it's like 12 inches by about 18 inches, which for packs and accessories actually cuts a lot of stuff. Otherwise, I'll just tile the images together and print them out on my home printer, tape them together, and cut them out because I'm not doing that much stuff. You know, I got a friend who does haute couture stuff, big dresses, and he's got a plotter and a cutter. And anyway, so my 3D printer, I bought it because I thought I was going to do one thing with it. And I think every time you buy a tool, and I'm a fan, buy tools because you think you're going to use them one way and then you do it a lot. So this is that frame, turned out to be 70 grams, and it's an exploration. It's just, God, I don't know, would this work? So I modeled it. I modeled it in a way that I could print it. I printed it out. I added 1/8-inch fiberglass. I've got my sample. I stuck it in and went, hey, what do you know? It's not optimized, but it's proof that this idea is worth doing another, and it's relatively quick. I mean, I could have cut this scissored it out of polyethylene, or probably, poly whatever, and built it. But those are, to me, that's impediments, right? Well, like that's a lot of work. But I could just let the 3D printer print away. I mean, I've done a lot of these little, like I bought it when I had this project for Chrome, and one of the things was a carabiner. So I modeled this, printed a bunch of samples, and then this actually went to the die cast zinc caster, and they did a little bit of modification for design for manufacturing, little bottle openers, little clips. I also do a ton of this stuff where, I've got an idea and I want to buckle from somebody, from trimmers, and I can either spend $100 on a FedEx and wait 3 weeks, or I can loft up a simple model, or I can laser cut out one, stick it on and go, yeah, okay, that fits. So that immediacy. Certainly creating voids in things where you're not going to knife cut it out, or, like if you're doing Molly, where you get a punch and you're like punching a million, by the time you've done a full plate carry or something, it looks kind of shitty. So that's the obvious. And I mean, here's an example. This is a little tote that fit on my printer, and I create the patterns digitally, so I've got it. This is another one, again, so shoulder straps, the thing you really kind of got to get right on a pack. I built this little jig to test assumptions because I've been working on the same assumption for years, what the shape and angles. And so I wanted to build this little jig to test it. And if I hadn't had a laser cutter, man, I could have cut them out with a jigsaw and done stuff. But just thinking through that was enough for me to go, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But having the laser cutter allowed me to make this jig that then when a client says, no, just like straight up, I can lay this out and go, oh, we can, but see that pucker? We need to deal with that one way or another. Or, and I built these adjustable segments so I can fit the whole shoulder strap. I also use it mocking up for foam, or this is a mock-up of compression molding. Physical, it's the opposite because I'm removing material before I laminate stuff on, but it gives me the look. And then, if I need the performance, I'll do what it takes to get a real mold. I have a little tiny CNC mill, like $300, and I use it enough for little parts where I machine this out of plastic to just go, yeah, okay, I wonder if I could do a flat buckle. I also build dies and jigs. This is a little heat sealing jig for packaging. And a quick way to go, okay, well, I bonded the two pieces of TPU together and these little tabs are kind of in the wrong place. Again, how quickly can I find out before I waste my client's time? Voids, both for performance and, this is a crampon bag. And I wanted to see if this stuff would hold up. So I built 3, sent them out to get used for drain holes for crampons. And the image is a B-52 from above, those dead plane graveyards. Personally, I thought that was hilarious. Again, I've done packaging or POP again with a laser cutter. You could send this stuff out, but if you got the tool, it really doesn't add that much time to actually make it. Or this is a compression molding tool for a Kydex for a fender for roller skis. And foam, likewise. Again, if you're going to build a model, scissor cut it, it's not going to look that good. Knife cut it, you're going to hesitate. You're going to say, well, okay, maybe I'll just make the simple one instead of the design that the client's going to really understand. So questions, and that, I also have a little heat press. I've got sewing machines. I have a little wood shop, but those two tools along with sewing machines, I probably use the most. Any questions before we roll on to other stuff? And we're getting closer. Okay.
Oh, Pete.
So, yeah.
Mike wants to know, where do you source foam?
Oh, Norseman foam. They're all over the place, and they have they actually, make buns and cut them up, and they're in the U.S., they're in Canada. You can buy. You have to commit to like a 4x6 sheet that's, I want to say, an inch and a half thick, and then they'll slice it. So you don't have to buy it that often, but when you need, particularly when if you're laminating and you need particular foam chemical contents, it's easier to have it fill up your crawl space than to go to the upholstery shop and try and find stuff.
Mike mentioned he's looking to make custom knee pads. And
Oh,
then Maria chimed in and asked if you use a walking foot sewing machine.
um, I do have a pedestal bed walking foot that I use occasionally, and when I need it, I need it. Otherwise, I've got just a drop needle machine, medium, kind of medium to heavyweight. And I'm finding over the years I'm actually using lighter needles and like Tex 46 threads, where sort of the edict early on was if it's the join seam for packs made out of 1000D, you're sewing with Tex 90, God whatever, and so yeah, I mean, I get away with a lot with the lighter machines, except for those things where you're just screwed and you need a heavy machine. Okay, so I get clients that, as we start a new project, and often a lot of my, about half my clients are some kind of a startup, or they're a brand that does not do sewn products and they want to get into it. And at some point they go, oh, we want to be environmentally friendly. Can we use recycled material? It's like, sure, is that all you're going to do? Uh, and there's a lot of people doing really interesting stuff. I just saw with Nemo, they've got a new range out of packs and sleeping bags with a QR code with a million resources, how to get it fixed and how to pass it on and ultimately how to recycle it. And after 30 years, I just wish we were closer. I mean, recycled polyester has been around for ages. In the early days, it was like, I'm not paying more money for garbage because it was more expensive. I think recycling bottles into fabric is kind of a horrible thing to do, because once you put coating on it, now it's garbage. Whereas if you made another plastic bottle out of it, you could make something else. I applaud the movement, and people are doing good things. It's just, the best example is locally in Canada. There's General Recycled that does closed loop aramid fibers for like fire protective stuff. They get it back from oil rigs and fire departments. They strip it back down to fibers. They reweave it, and it's expensive. This stuff is expensive, so it's worth the labor input to recycle it in a closed loop. After that, trying to get stuff back from consumers, I don't know. I mean, man, I have a hard enough time at end of life after we've prepared our stuff, what do I do with it? And a lot of brands will say, well, it is capable of being recycled. Oh, great, that's kissing your sister. I mean, it's not getting done. A couple of interesting things, though. I worked with a friend of mine, Mike Valvano. He's working on relaunching the Caribou brand, and he convinced a resource in the Carolinas, Hemp Black, to knit all of the pieces of this pack so there's no industrial fall down. It's all the same fiber content. The straps are not foam, they're knit. And theoretically, and again, Mike has found a source that will mechanically recycle this, shred it, after you nip off the metal. And the metal is aluminum. Aluminum's, metal is great for recycling. So here's one avenue, definitely high priced. The other, I think, I did a bunch of stuff where I was just sort of challenging myself to say, okay, how can I make compelling products that are basically built from rectangles? So there is no industrial fall down. There's no like production waste, but it still produces a compelling consumer product that somebody's going to want to hang on to. And in this case, this is, well, actually, this is Home Depot paint tarp material, which I think is acrylic, but I've made some out of linen, hemp linen. Again, just to look at like, can we, if the consumer's not going to bring it back, can we build something that could be composted and produces no little pile of crap? Because at the end of the day, factories are much more efficient, right? That's in their best interest to not have waste, because that's money, but there's still a pile of crap at the end. Okay, well, that's kind of the end of my story. Hey, I got a challenge for you though. This sewing factory, where do you think it is? Any guesses? Oh, come on.
We've got Mike saying Vancouver, Cam saying Vancouver, Marcus is saying LA, Bill saying Canada.
Yeah, it's Seattle.
Toronto.
Yeah, it's Filson's factory in Seattle. And it's a great factory. I mean, it's I forgot that Japanese efficiency system. But sewing factories at the end of the day kind of look like sewing factories.
We've definitely got some questions that have trickled in too, Pete, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Well, so clarification point here. Chris wanted to know, when you say knitting, are you referring to flat knit machines like Shima and Stoll?
Yes. Yeah, so that backpack was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces.
Oh, and here's a humdinger from Mike. What would it take for you to consider reshoring?
Oh, it's well, okay, first of all, I do have clients that manufacture domestically. In the US, largely thanks to the Berry Amendment, that military stuff has got to all come from the States. That has kept a lot of resources alive. I think it's cool finding factories that have skill levels that are above what has evolved to have low enough labor inputs so that it's viable. I mean, basically, a lot of factories are building really basic stuff, edge-bound, flat, boxy stuff. I would love it if a factory said, hey, man, we want to up our game. We still want to design so that it's efficient in material utilization and labor. Like I did a collaboration with Bill Amos, where we built this really shapy pack, but it had super good utilization because it was designed that way. So yeah, no, I'm a fan. It's like the ecosystem is like, we're not even at the 1980s, and no dispersions on anybody. It's as labor's increased and all this, it got pushed in a direction, and a lot of the talent that could help up the game isn't here anymore. I mean, there's still great people out there, but it's In a lot of ways, the stuff being made in the Front Range and in San Francisco in the 80s, in the 70s, was more complicated, higher quality than what's being made now in hard goods.
When you say the Front Range, do you mean the Front Range of?
Colorado.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, Boulder, Denver, Low Alpine, Heinz Snowbridge, all those guys.
Yep. Another question from Marcus. What are your top few favorite prototyping textiles?
I don't, it's so, for me, because I'm a consultant, it really depends on what I'm building. If I'm just messing around, then whatever's cheap that I'm not wasting stuff. Also, I do like, for hard goods, things that are dimensionally stable, so they don't have a lot of cross grain stretch, biases. Just because if I'm just trying to figure stuff out, I don't want to be trying to figure out, stretch.
And then question in from Julian. Where does designing for diversity of body shape fit into your development workflow?
I wish it fit in more. I've been wanting to do, as particularly the American consumer and outdoors person, body shapes have changed dramatically. Hardly anybody has paid attention to it. So I think, we build to the, sort of male and female size mediums a lot in hard goods. So I would love it if a client came to me and said, you know what, size extra large, short waisted, let's go get it, or whatever. Or my daughter these days, she would be a women's size 2. Now, because of resizing, she's a quad 0. Stuff doesn't fit her either. Oh, come on. Did I say nothing inspiring or provocative?
Well, Mike wants you to know that 6 Seasons does.
That what?
6 Seasons does.
Oh, right. Oh, cool. No, that's great. It's not nobody, just not many. Well, we got 2 minutes left, so either we wrap up or one more comment, since we've got this factory picture up. When I first started going to Asia, particularly China, everybody was wearing blue and green suits, and it was the economic free enterprise zones in Guangdong. That was it. And when you walk in, when the white people would show up, the sewers would put their heads down, right? They didn't want to be noticed. It was, it was very authoritarian. Now, when you go in, people are like, "Oh, hey, who's here? This is kind of cool." I was driving with an assistant merchandiser in his nice car. He had his phone up in China, and WeChat was live, and he was basically bad-mouthing President Xi. And I was like, "Dude, do you want to put the phone in the trunk?" Because I still had that paranoia of the old days. I was like, nah, it's fine. The evolution of countries that have benefited on a personal level, I think, has really been heartwarming. People's lives are better in many places than they were 30 years ago.
I think we have quick time for just one more.
Okay.
I was wondering, how important is product/market fit when designing gear?
Is market, does the consumer actually want what you made? Yeah, huge. And that's where this separation in time and space, I think, is just a royal pain in the ass. That if we're cooking on a project and it's sourced offshore and we're flying back and forth, I can get a line out in 8 months, and we're still rolling the dice. Projects not uncommonly take 2 years. Yeah, is that really being market responsive?
Well, I think we're, oh, Todd just said to clarify, is product market foot need first or build it and they will come attitude? Fit.
Yeah,
Product market.
well, I mean, occasionally things get made like the backcountry bidet that nobody knew they wanted. But by and large, innovation as, I mean, I think innovation has a really some specific definitions, and that Blockbuster never seen it before. The consumer didn't know they needed it, like like the Sony Walkman back in the day. Those come along occasionally. Everything else is incremental innovation, a seasonal improvement on the thing that came before. And sometimes because of material or technique, it's really, really better. But if you didn't buy that one, the one before still works. So yeah, I think most of it is being out there and paying attention to the consumer and going, hey, you know what? There's an unfulfilled need, not desire necessarily, because I think it's better if you actually satisfy needs. Um, and you go get it, and the consumer says, yeah, you know, this, I've been kind of getting along with this thing that didn't work very well. This is better.
Thanks so much, Pete. I'm looking at the time here and I'm going to advise if you could go ahead and maybe hop off screen share.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Everyone else, go ahead and unmute and show your faces so we can say goodbye.
Yep.
And this does officially complete our webinar for April. We're going to convene again on May 27th to hear from Eric Bronswart across the pond in the Netherlands. He'll be speaking about the circularity revolution that needs to happen in the cycling gear and apparel industry. All right, so it's a wrap.
Cool.
Everyone, yeah, show yourselves. Say goodbye.
Ah. Hey, Dan. Hey, Cam.
Thanks, Pete.
You know, I expected you guys to heckle a bit more, particularly those that know me. I mean, really, you were unduly kind.
I did, like in my mind.
Okay, I knew I was taking a psychic blow. Brian, you guys.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, man.
See ya. Oh,
Thank
hey,
you.
cool.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.